As a decade, the 1970s can be marked by a rise in a passion for a better environment.
Rachel Carson, marine biologist, published the book titled Silent Spring. The book warned against the growing use of pesticides, which were used for the killing of insects and rodents. Carson warned that pesticides were poisoning the very food which they were created to protect. Carson warned Americans that if the use of pesticides were continued, they would face a silent spring, in which birds killed off by pesticides would no longer fill the air with song in the springtime. She also argued that of all the weapons used in man's war against nature, pesticides had some of the worst effects. The book sold 500,000 copies within its first 6 months of publication, spawning alarm across the nation. Many chemical companies threatened legal action and claimed its accusation highly inaccurate. President Kennedy took notice of this book as well. He established an advisory committee to investigate the situation. Carson's work was surely not the first step in taking action to protect the environment. However, it opened the nation's eyes to a problem that would promote an entire movement geared towards protecting the environment. Although Carson would not live to see the United States government outlaw DDT in 1972, her work was influential in helping Americans become more conscientious of their effects on the environment, leading to the very beginning of the environmental movement.
The 1970s brought about a new culture that would actively address environmental issues. President Kennedy, as mentioned before, formed an advisory committee to investigate accusations made by Rachel Carson in her book Silent Spring regarding the use of pesticides. However, major presidential involvement did not begin until the administrations of Nixon and Carter, when they confronted issues of pollution, growth of nuclear energy, and conservation. The first Earth Day on April 22, 1970, was indicated by Gaylord Nelson, a United States Senator from Wisconsin, who is sometimes called the father of Earth Day. Nelson's primary objective was to organize a nationwide public demonstration large enough to gain attention of politicians and force issues of environmental protection into the legislative forefront. The first Earth Day, coordinated by Harvard Law student Dennis Hayes, was celebrated by more than 20 million individuals. On April 22, 1970, nearly every community participated in some form of environmental awareness activity and spotlighted such problems as pollution, the growth of toxic waste, and the Earth's dwindling resources. The celebration of the first Earth Day spearheaded the environmental movement in the United States. As a result, the United States government established the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, created with the President's Council on Environmental Quality, and passed the Clean Air Act, which established national air quality standards.
In an effort to make our peace with nature, President Nixon set out on a course that led to the passage of several landmark procedures. Although President Nixon was never considered an environmentalist, he did recognize the nation's growing concern about the environment.
In 1970, 15 existing federal pollution programs were made into the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. The new agency was given the power to set and enforce pollution standards, to conduct environmental research, and to assist state and local governments in pollution control, which is still in control today. In 1970, Nixon signed a new Clean Air Act that added several amendments to the Clean Air Act of 1963. This new act gave the government the authority to set air standards. Following the 1970 Clean Air Act, Congress also passed the Endangered Species Act, in addition to the laws that limit pesticide use and curb strip mining, the practice of mining for ore and coal by digging gaping holes in the land. Some 35 environmental laws took effect during the decade, addressing every aspect of conservation and cleanup, from protecting endangered animals to regulating auto emissions.
Throughout the 1970s, the federal government took steps to ensure the continued well-being of Alaska. which was the largest state in the nation and one of the most ecologically sensitive. In 1968, a discovery of oil reserves was made, and with the construction of a massive pipeline to transport it, many new jobs were created, and it greatly increased state revenues. However, the new department raised concerns about Alaska's wildlife, as well as the rights of its native people. In 1971, Nixon signed the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, which turned over millions of acres of land to the state's native tribes for conservation and tribal use. In 1978, President Carter enhanced this conservation effort by setting aside an additional 56 million acres in Alaska as national monuments. During the 1970s, arguments were made regarding the hazards of nuclear energy. Concerns centered around nuclear plants and the waste they produced. They were potentially dangerous to humans and their surrounding environment.
On March 28, 1979, these concerns of nuclear energy opponents were validated. That morning, one of the nuclear reactors at a plant on 3 Mile Island near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, malfunctioned. The reactor overheated after its cooling system failed. This caused panic that radiation might escape and spread over the region.
Just 2 days later, more than 100,000 residents were evacuated from the surrounding area. On April 9th, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is the federal agency that monitors the nuclear power industry, announced that the immediate danger was over. The events at 3 Mile Island again sparked the debate over nuclear power. Supporters of nuclear power argued that no one had been killed or seriously injured, while opponents countered this by saying that chance alone had averted a possible major tragedy. They demanded that the government halt all construction of new power plants and gradually shut down existing nuclear facilities. While the government did not do away with nuclear power, federal officials did recognize nuclear energy's potential danger to both humans and the environment. The environmental movement that began in the 1970s is still prevalent. Earth Day is celebrated by millions every April 22nd. People's concern for their planet has been rekindled time and time again by the intense global warming debates. Millions now aim to live greener lifestyles. In 1980, Congress added another 104 million acres as protected areas in Alaska. As the 1970s came to a close, Americans became acutely aware of the dangers that nuclear power plants pose to both humans and the environment. During the 1970s, nuclear power seemed to be an attractive alternative to America's heavy dependence on foreign oil for energy. As a result of the accident at 3 Mile Island, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission strengthened its safety standards and improved its inspection procedures. Today, nuclear energy is being replaced by safer and more economically friendly methods of energy, such as solar, wind, and other natural renewable sources.
The 1970s was only the beginning of a movement that would give people a cause worth fighting for.
From the land to the water to the air we breathe, we have proved that it is not only the government's duty, but our duty as members of planet Earth to be aware of what happens
to our home, just as people only 4 decades ago realized.
I'm in a tree that's slightly more excited than what you're doing, isn't it?
Hi! We're making a movie. Oh wait, I'm zooming in. It doesn't zoom. Oh well.
We should punch that kid in the face.
You should. That's rude.
We should film it. We should film it, huh?
Carson warned Americans that if the use of influential in helping Americans become I'm sorry.
I was laughing so hard she had to pull the car over because I was eating jalapenos in this like burrito that I got, and I touched it and then I touched my eye and I didn't have anything, so I took a water bottle and stuck it on my eye and went like, oh, like that, and then my mascara was like running down my face. It was